Bum, 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 bum. Welcome back, everyone. Episode 22 of
Chiss Ascendancy.
I like how that's your weekly voice now.
Yeah, I don't know why I started doing it, but now I'm doing it.
I don't know.
All the time.
I've had to dial back from going every time you do it. But episode 22 today, we're talking about everyone's favorite Imperial Grand Moff.
Because he's your only option. It's like, hey, you're my favorite sister. Which I can say to my sister and get away with, because I don't have another sister.
Right.
And I'm never lying no matter how little I like her. And she'll never hear this joke because she doesn't support us or love us.
Oh!
Sick burn.
Dude, what if she's like on a road trip this week?
This is the one episode she watches. Worth it.
But today we're talking about Will Huff, also known as Tarkin, for you average casual fans out there. And so, man, there's so much stuff. There's comics, novels, all that stuff. And so he's someone that's recognizable from Star Wars, but there's a lot more that meets the surface. He's basically like an iceberg.
Yeah. The first thing that really ever drew my attention to Tarkin, this was very early on, was when...
Is it when Vader's choking that guy?
Vader was choking. I believe that guy's name is Mahdi.
Yeah, Admiral Mahdi.
Or
General Mahdi.
I think it's Rear Admiral. Or Vice Admiral Mahdi. That's what they're called, bro. I didn't make the names up. I just know the facts.
And so...
and Tarkin said, release him, and Vader listened.
Yeah.
That's the only person you see besides the Emperor that Vader willingly acquiesces to.
I noticed that he rolls his R's very nicely. That's one of the things I noticed right off the bat. Vader, release him. And I was like, ooh, a fancy fans. But yeah, Vader listens to Tarkin. So today... we're going to dive into everything Tarkin. So,
do we have any news before we get started?
Oh, newsy news? Well, we did talk a little bit about squadrons, but there's a little bit more details. Something that's cool is in the trailer, you see a couple of very familiar faces. I think you see Admiral Radish, I believe, is in the trailer. So he's super cool. Man, I'm excited for that. But I'm also sad that we only got him for that one movie on Rogue One. Because Radis was like... they say that Radis is the more radical, which is why he's Radis. He's the raddest admiral around. But he's like the more aggressive version of Admiral Akbar. And so I would like to have seen more of him.
That's why Admiral Akbar perseveres.
But Radis got a better send-off, thanks to Rian Johnson. So you've got that. Hera Syndulla's in it. Wedge Antilles is in it.
Oh, that's cool.
And the coolest thing is it's New Republic era. It's right after the fall of the Empire. So it's the New Republic versus the Imperial Remnant.
Oh, wow. So Hera survived.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She's all the way in Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, yeah. I guess I remember the ghost being called.
Oh, yeah. The ghost is there. So that's a little bit of news.
All right.
On to Tarkin Town.
Let's do it.
So, Tarkin. He's the first Grand Moff.
And as far as we know, the only Grand Moff.
There's more out there, I think, but I cannot recall.
I can't recall
any of them with any consequence off the top of my head.
It doesn't really matter because Tarkin was the person that the rank was invented for.
Right. Yeah. If it's like... it's kind of like, you know... if there's a better light bulb now, but it's like, yeah, but you're no Thomas Edison.
Right.
You know what I mean? Even though I hear Thomas Edison was a wiener. But, so you have Tarkin, first name Will Huff. So already that's a very, cool. Yeah. It's
already a power move.
Power move. What's your name? Will Huff. You're like,
well, all right, we'll look out for this one.
Yeah, you're serious. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen Tarkin make a joke.
He's got like that dry and withdrawn sense of humor where everybody else in the room is the joke and he's the only person that cares to know
he's like the
joke.
Opposite of Dad. Like our dad, he'll say something that's not supposed to be a joke and everybody thinks it's hilarious, and Dad's like
And
like
then,
after
and
that,
then we'll wind him up.
yeah, and just keep him going. We're like,
Yeah.
no.
He's got a little traction. He'll just keep going.
Yeah. So it's kind of like we're all laughing because he's making kind of a fool of himself. Not in like a rude way, but just like whenever he gets you laughing, there's no...
You heard it here, folks.
His
Josiah said our dad's an idiot.
No, I
and
said...
that's Josiah's only opinion.
He's willing to be silly once you get him wound up.
Yeah.
Will Huff is the kind of guy to be like, all right, well, I guess I'm just the most richest, most famous, best guy in the room. The rest of you guys are pretty trash.
Yeah, he's constantly just making fun of everybody else in the room to himself.
Yeah. And, man, in Rebels, his head is huge, now that I'm thinking about it. You remember?
Yeah, it's shaped like a trapezoid.
It looks like a light bulb.
With the wide end up top.
Yeah, it looks like a light bulb, now that I made the Thomas Edison reference. But we're going to jump a little bit into his backstory, because a lot of people, if you're a casual Star Wars fan, or even if you're a little bit of a stronger Star Wars fan, you've probably seen him in A New Hope. That's the only Star Wars he's in as far as legacy films. And then he made a return in Rogue One.
Not the same actor, but the character makes an appearance.
I guess I meant Skywalker films.
Yeah.
Dude, Tarkin is the guy that takes over the room.
By the way, can we just say how
awesome he looked?
How magnificent the CGI rendering was in Rogue One. It looked like he was there.
Yeah.
A real man.
At the very, very end of Rogue One, whenever they're like, what have we been given? And they look around and Leia's character's like, Hope. I was like, it looks kind of like Leia.
Yeah. It was passable. Like, if that came out and, like...
Yeah.
When Star Wars came out, to be like, oh, Carrie Fisher.
Yeah, for sure. But Tarkin's character is, like, uncanny. Which, to me, is actually the harder job. Because Carrie Fisher in the 70s, she doesn't really have freckles. She has kind of a even skin tone. Like, to me, if you have to recreate something, that's easier. But man... Tarkin's full on cancer spots on the face, like...
Yeah. Well, and he was on screen for an extended period of time. Too,
yeah.
So you had to make it work and make it last.
I was impressed because you didn't see him in the trailers. Mm-hmm. So you see him, and he's got his hands behind his back, and he's looking at the Death Star as it's being completed, and I was like, don't you tease me, Rogue One, folks. Is that Will Huff, or isn't it? And, because I had already read the Tarkin novel at this time, so I was telling you, like... you've always liked Tarkin, but I was like, oh, I'm telling you, man, he's on another level. Yeah. And so when I saw the reflection, I was like, oh my God, they did a beautiful job with that reflection. Wow, that's uncanny. Mm-hmm. You can tell it's him, but, it's, you're looking at him through the glass. You don't really know if, then he turns around and he's like, I will tell the Emperor that the weapon is finished. And you're like... Like, it was just amazing. Yeah. I love him and Krennic's dynamic.
Yeah, I like that.
Krennic is such a bully.
Well, and Krennic is such a wiener, too. So it's nice to see Tarkin just, constantly, just putting him in his place.
Dude, you can tell that Darth Vader and Tarkin talk so much crap about Krennic when they're hanging out.
Yeah, they're like...
Want to play a little golf, Will Huff?
And I need to
Vader
let off some
steam.
And then I said... Be careful not to choke on your...
And Tarkin was like, very funny, Vader. Very funny.
Supreme wit, Lord Vader.
Oh.
Your shot.
Would you care for some heroin?
Oh my God.
Hey, you brought it back last week and say you opened the Pandora's box. I had closed it. It's back. So, let's jump a little bit into, I guess, his early childhood. You recently...
Tell me about your childhood. What's your mother like?
Well, I grew up on Eriadu. It was terrible. So I guess jump a little bit into the backstory, because I read the novelization of Tarkin when it first came... Well, novelization. The actual book, that's the only thing. There's not a movie of it.
Yet.
Although I would
that
love
would be
that.
Sick. I'm going to start foaming at the mouth just thinking about it.
Dude, oh man, that would be awesome.
It would be cool.
I need a novel, preferably by Timothy Zahn, with just some Thrawn and Tarkin shenanigans.
Yeah, I would 100% want Timothy to write that, because no flack to you, James, but
well, you made a good point about James. When you're reading Star Wars authors, each of them...
They all have their own tendencies.
A niche.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for instance, Darth Bane was written by Drew Karpyshyn.
Right.
And he just knows how to build a story.
Right.
He knows how to build a character.
Yeah.
And you read 3 books,
Yeah.
and most of it is about Bane. You're with Bane most of the time.
And that's all I care
And
about.
the whole time you're like, yeah, I'm not sick of this yet. This is amazing.
Yeah.
And then Timothy Zahn, he's got like the legacy type. He can build you a whole new story.
Yeah. Well, and he's good at keeping simultaneous storylines going.
Yeah.
Without you really losing interest. Just the only reason I would always skip the Arinda Price sections is just because I hate her.
Yeah. Arinda.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is also that you got to realize that Timothy Zahn's writing kind of in a box.
Right.
At that point.
Correct.
But if you go back to the Heir to the Empire series, you're actually toggling back and forth between Thrawn and Luke, Han, and Leia's story, some Lando, some Mara Jade.
Well, and it's cool because he's balancing each of those like secondary and tertiary stories as well, like going back between those and weighing them and saying what's important.
Yeah, you kind of get
world.
you kind of get half of Thrawn, and then everybody else is sharing the other half.
Yeah, it's
but
really
it's
cool.
very balanced.
Yeah, but James is
the details guy.
James Luceno is the author of the Thrawn book.
No, Tarkin.
Sorry, Tarkin. We're on Thrawn in my mind. But he kind of cut his teeth in Plagueis, is the first book that I read that he wrote, Star Wars wise.
He's written other Star Wars stuff, but Plagueis was probably his best Star Wars book.
Which people are saying is officially now not canon because of the Queen's Shadow book that says
Or
Palpatine.
Queen's Peril? I don't know. It's whatever the new book is coming out.
I think it's Queen's Shadow. You can look that up and
Go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong. But anyway, that's the one that I had read first, and I enjoyed his writing in that book because the political intrigue was necessary because it was talking about how Plagueis was balancing all of these different piles, and how he was influencing all the decision makers, but from the shadows, and how he leveraged to getting Palpatine in power, and all those sorts of things were really necessary. And I guess it makes sense in Tarkin that Tarkin is someone who, because he's a non-Force user, has to just master politics and master bureaucracy. And that's where a lot of his power comes from, is his ability to recognize that and to manipulate it and to be pulling the strings. It just gets a little lofty sometimes, where he's like giving you the nth degree of details, even in the little things like the creators of like Tarkin's ship, the Carrion Spike, like all the details about that ship and all the features that it has and all the makers of those features. And I'm like, oh my God, just like inundated with all these details.
I don't know if it's Lucino or Lucino, but his writing style is, a lot of times when a new book comes out, we'll listen to it before we read it, or we'll listen to it as we're reading it, or we'll toggle back and forth. James's reading or writing style, to really get the full effect, you really need the book.
Yeah.
So that you can go, hang on, just a second. You just listed 35 parts of this ship's interior manifest,
Yeah. And I'm just trying to like balance back between what's like important to hold on to and the things that I can forget. Right.
So Queen's Shadow came out in 2019. Queen's Peril is the new book that kind of decanonizes Plagueis, basically.
But I think...
But James has written a lot of Star Wars stuff.
Also, he was like definitely trying to protect his claim on things because he did confirm some of the things he wrote in Plagueis in Tarkin, which is canon. So like 114D, his droid, he's canon now.
So James Lucino wrote Darth Maul Saboteur all the way back in 2001. That was like one of his first Star Wars books. He also wrote some of the Legacy series where you have the Yuuzhan Vong War. He wrote like 3 or 4 of that series, which I think is 19 books total. He wrote the book Millennium Falcon, which was a really big deal when it came out in 2008. And man, I'm sure he gets into the nitty gritty about everything in the Millennium Falcon. So that'll be fun to go and look back on. He also wrote, he was the author of the Dark Lord trilogy, which is Labyrinth of Evil, which has, I'm sure you've seen this cover before where it has Grievous and Anakin on there. Mm-hmm. He wrote that. He wrote, he either helped or wrote the novelization for Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, that's cool.
And then he wrote Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader. And that's kind of 3 into kind of the Rogue One era. That's Legends now, I believe. But
regardless...
Plagueis, Cloak of Deception was really good.
Plagueis was his magnum opus.
And another one that you should read that is really, really good is Catalyst. It's a prequel to Rogue One. And it's been written by James. Yeah. And it's a really... here's James's thing. James will help you fall in love with a character. Mm-hmm. And so you can watch Rogue One and go, God, this Krennic guy's annoying. But if you read Catalyst, you fall in love with Krennic.
When you can tell that Timothy Zahn doesn't like him at all either.
Well, you can tell that Timothy Zahn doesn't like Krennic because
of the way that he appears.
Well, yeah, and when you're thinking about Rebels Season 4, Star Wars Rebels, the writers, Dave Filoni goes, okay, so what we're doing is we're going to have, that's my Dave Filoni impression. But he basically he's pitting Thrawn against Krennic, and it sucks because Thrawn is obviously more deserving of the Emperor's attention and the Empire's finance. But because Krennic is working on the Death Star, and that's kind of up Palpatine's alley of like the ultimate power in the universe, and so you see that whole season that even though you never see Krennic in the flesh in Rebels, Thrawn is having to deal with freaking Arenda Price can't do her job as the governor of Lothal. He's having to deal with the rebels. Yeah. And then he's got generals who are like worried about their stuff. Like there's been multiple times in Rebels where something falls apart and it makes Thrawn look bad, but it's because his subordinates are idiots. Yeah. And so he's busting his butt to try to fund the TIE Defender project, which would have saved the Empire. And Krennic's getting all the glory and all the money for the,
Speaking of the ultimate power in the galaxy being right up Palpatine's alley, something that's cool from the book, that's a cool quote, and it's not a spoiler because you already saw Tarkin on the Death Star in Episode 4, get over it. Basically, Palpatine promotes Tarkin to being over all of the Death Star project, and that's kind of where you see him at the beginning of the book as well, is overseeing some of the production on Geonosis. And Palpatine says, soon you'll be in charge of the supreme power in the galaxy, and Tarkin says, I don't believe that will ever be the case, my lord. Which is super cool because he's totally like saying... He's basically heavily implying that he knows that Palpatine's a Sith Lord and that he's the ultimate power. Yeah. Which is super dope.
Well, Tarkin he's an alpha male, but he's the type of alpha that's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to align myself with the super alpha male.
Yeah, he's the master of choose your battles.
Yep. Yes, that's a perfect way to put it. Yeah. So James does an amazing job of making you fall in love with a character. So when he wrote Plagueis, you're like, oh my God, no wonder. Sidious talks about this in Episode 3. And then he wrote Tarkin, and it just that kind of...
Yeah, I already liked Tarkin.
You liked him, but I feel like after reading the novel...
Yeah, well, because you can...
He has a more special place.
He's great at showing how a character becomes who that person is. Even if that person's already made before he gets his hooks in them, he can like recreate their beginning in such a way that gives you mad respect for
him. When Tarkin was being announced the novel, they said, tune in as, Grand Moff Tarkin gets the Plagueis treatment.
That's a cool way to say that.
And so when I saw that, I was like, all right, give it to me. Like, I was so excited about... Yeah. He just fleshed out Plagueis so beautifully. And so he does that, and then in Catalyst, like I was saying, he does that for Krennic, but also for Galen Erso, Jen's dad. And so those two characters have a stronger... I read that book before Rogue One came out, so every time I saw Galen or Krennic, I was like, here they are, there they are.
Yeah, I know you really like Krennic.
Yeah, Krennic's funny because it's fun to make fun of Krennic. Like, he's cool, but it's, Blast Points podcast always talks about how he's the guy who spills coffee on his white jacket. Like, he's just that kind of guy where you're like, oh, here we go.
I'm just that kind of guy.
I'm just that kind of guy. How about you?
But anyway, let's really get into it.
So you're going to kind of lead this whole... You have that fresh on the brain.
Yeah.
So go for it.
I'll do my best. Anyway, so Tarkin is a native to the planet Iriadu. Which is brought up multiple times to be in a similar sector to both Naboo and Tatooine, which Palpatine kind of points to the fact that Tarkin, Palpatine, and Vader all come from the Outer Rim in that sector, and they're like, we were the underdogs, and now we're ruling this bad boy.
Dude, that is pretty cool.
Which is a pretty cool point for Palpatine to be like, hey, look at us. Look at us. Say it again. Look at us. And so Palpatine...
dang, that is pretty raw.
Yeah, it turns out that Palpatine kind of like makes Tarkin's career and picks him out from a relatively young age, pre Clone Wars, pre Civil War, pre anything that's going on.
He sees the potential.
Naboo. He sees things that Tarkin is capable of, and he wants a man on the inside, basically helping him
get stuff ready.
Because it's rare that there's somebody as competent as Tarkin, and Palpatine kind of sees that early on.
Well, it's rare that someone has that bright of a future and still knows their place and knows how to choose their battles, like you're saying.
We'll get into that.
You've got Krennic, not to keep harping on Krennic.
Yeah, just mad dog.
But like he's like, all right, well, I'm going to be in charge of this whole thing. And when you read Thrawn Treason, I want to say, it's really, really heavily implied that Krennic doesn't think that the Emperor or Vader are capable of ruling. Yeah.
Especially from assistant director Ronan's perspective.
Yeah, and so you're reading this book, and you're like, so who the freak is going to rule the galaxy? Krennic, you? You can't even like put on your shirt front ways. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so Tarkin is the guy that goes, if it came down to it, could I rule the galaxy? Probably. Yeah. Am I smart enough? Absolutely. But you know what I'm not going to do? Piss off the guy that's ruling the galaxy right now. Right. And so he's capable, but he's trustworthy.
Right.
And he knows his place.
So what's cool about Tarkin, and this is what's cool about Tarkin's entire bloodline, we find out, is that Tarkin comes from Iriadu, and on Iriadu...
I would like to request that every time you say Iriadu, you have to say it in Tarkin's voice. Okay, go ahead.
Is ruled by the Tarkin family for generations. And the way that they ensure that each member of their family who's going to step into the new ruling position is they have this... they've obviously civilized the planet by now. But they have this section that they refuse to tame at all. And they call it the Carrion. And it's basically this vast plateau of like insane wildlife and apex predators that Tarkin learns pretty quickly. I think they take him out for the first time when he's like 12. And it's basically like survival training to the nth degree.
Yeah.
And he has to go out there. I think he's allowed to carry a blaster, but they mostly use vibro lances. And the ultimate goal is to ensure that all the apex predators don't get wiped out, but they recognize your place out of fear. So they recognize that you're the ruling authority, that you're the greatest threat because you've asserted your dominance in such a way that they won't even think about touching you.
Yeah, basically the idea is you've got to go into this no man's land and show that you're the top of the food chain, because if you can't rule there, then you don't deserve to rule elsewhere.
Right.
That's pretty ballin'.
And
the cool thing is, it's like, it's not, sometimes
there's no mollycoddle.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's training other times, where like, if you watch like
there's a safety net that you can't see. There's no safety net here.
Yeah, when you watch the Clone Wars and they're training the cadets and they're like, all right, guys, well, you keep screwing up. Like, it's not like that. It's like, imagine the simulations like Fives and Echo and all them go through, but the bullets are all real. Right. And the first time you get shot, you're dead. Yeah. Like, that's how it is. And if a wildcat gets you, then a wildcat gets you. Yeah. And you shouldn't have ruled anyways.
And he talks about times that, like, there's all kinds of crazy insects and stuff, and so, like, there are insects, like, eating his face, and he had to, like, get out of it. Like, there's nobody protecting him.
Right.
I mean, like, he has his uncle who basically has lived out there for, like, 3 generations. I don't know what that guy's doing, but he's on some another level.
Yeah.
And
his uncle can just kind of walk around butt naked and nobody messes with him because he's been
he's like he's such a part of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That it's kind of like an Avatar where at the beginning you see the Marine, what's his name, Jake, and he's like making this big fuss and he gets attacked by all those wolves, and then the blue chick was like, it's your fault that they attacked you. You were sloppy, you attracted attention. And the uncle's kind of reached that level where he's so in tune with the land that he can just get through no problem. But the coolest thing is that if you die, you die.
Yeah.
And if you don't survive, then you're not worthy of ruling. You're not a good enough Tarkin. And like you even see in the book where the uncle's like, when you get to this certain challenge, you're going to see the bones of your ancestors that didn't make it.
Oh, snap.
They just leave them out there. They don't even bury them, which is pretty ballin'.
Yeah, because you don't deserve a burial.
Yeah, so it's like freaking their whole planet is Sparta, and he's now here to assert his Spartan rule over the galaxy.
Basically, Tarkin's family is the opposite of everyone in the world today.
Yeah, right?
Survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
They're like the picture of the Darwinian concept.
Pretty much, dude. And what's cool is they all through this time when they're, and it's kind of backstory, like, flashback to where this part of his childhood's relevant to this part of his career. But you can, throughout all of it, see that all of this is leading to him being
and isn't kind
one
of
Palpatine's peers.
Isn't Plagueis, correct me if I'm wrong, but does Plagueis jump back and forth time-wise? A little bit?
I want to say yes. Just because you see... it's more linear, I think, but I mean, you see basically from him as the first time he kills his master, and then all of a sudden he go to mask, and he's this big power chain. But I think for the most part it's linear.
Okay.
It's definitely not as flashbacky as.
Yeah, I was just trying to. I was trying to remember if
Tarkin.
they're. I was trying to remember if they're similar writing styles. But anyways, so he basically is growing up, and the writing is from quote unquote present day, which is between episode 3 and 4.
Yeah, I want to say that obviously it ends somewhere prior to episode 4. But you see a lot of it kind of unfold like 30 years prior to episode 4 and on.
Right.
So even before episode 1, a lot of this is taking place because it's Tarkin's career. Because by the time we're in Clone Wars, which is between episodes 2 and 3,
Right.
He's already a captain serving under Even Peel.
Right.
Which is the Citadel episode. I can't remember what that prison's called.
I think it's called the Citadel.
Yeah, so,
they have to break...
Yeah, he's memorized half the code. And
yeah, you got to break Tarkin and Even Peel out of their prison there. And then that's where Echo gets all blown up, and then he actually survived and all that stuff.
But a really important part of that arc is seeing Tarkin interact with Anakin. And so it talks about in the book how Tarkin pretty much knows that Vader's Anakin. He's put 2 and 2 together. He's figured out that if Anakin survived the fall of the Jedi, but he's still using the dark side of the Force, he's probably a Sith, which means that Palpatine's probably his Sith master. And he's like, and I'm not going to say any of it to anybody.
Right.
He's like, he's got all the knowledge, and he's just keeping it right here.
And he's that guy, again, this is what sets the men apart from the boys, is Krennic
would try to leverage that
prematurely would go, not only does Krennic
would be that guy in Batman that was like, I figured out you're Batman, you're going to give me this much money every day or every year for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And
Joker kills
Morgan Freeman's character is like, you've just figured out the real identity of the man that by night beats up the baddest criminals of Gotham City, and your plan is to blackmail this person?
Yeah.
That's that guy right there, that's Krennic.
Yeah, Morgan Freeman. And your plan is to blackmail this person? Dude, Krennic is the guy that he's got leverage, and he doesn't know how to use it or when to use it.
Yeah.
Like, Darth Vader would cut him in line at the freaking... the supermarket or like in the food court at the Death Star or whatever, and Krennic would be like,
that's the last straw.
I know you're a Sith. I know you're Anakin. And Vader's like,
who?
Anakin, freaking Vader's like, do you want the breadsticks that bad, Orson? It's just, he doesn't know when to use it. Yeah. And Tarkin is the guy that he won't use it against somebody. If he ever was to use it, it's to say little things like, I don't think I'll ever be the number one holder of power in the galaxy. And it's really just he uses it to show them, hey, I know what's up, but I know what the heck is up.
Yeah.
Like, I know who you are, and I'm not using it against you. Yeah. I'm letting you know I respect the freak out of you, and I want to be on your team.
That's what's bad balling about Tarkin, is that he used his leverage, like all this knowledge that he has, which is like, those are the biggest secrets in the galaxy.
Right.
And he's using it to underscore his loyalty, as opposed to furthering himself.
Exactly.
Which has always worked out for him because Palpatine loves that.
So as he gets older...
he's a part of... We'll cover briefly some of his military history. So he tests his ultimate... I'm trying to decide whether to talk about his ultimate challenge now.
I would just go ahead and go linearly because...
Yeah, okay, so he's 12 years old. He's on the Carrion for the first time. He goes for the next several summers until I think he's like 16, 17.
Right.
And he only spends his summers there. Yeah, and so for the next few years, his uncle will drive past what's called the Carrion Spike, and they see it from a distance. And he never tells him what he has to do, but for all this time, he's saying, hey, that's where your final test is going to be. So essentially, it's a like a speed-cooled pillar of magma. So it's literally just like this obsidian spike almost. That's like,
which
I think
sounds
he said like
sharp as freak.
I think he said 20 meters high.
Yeah.
And it's smooth as glass for the most part. And so it's almost impossible to climb. And so there's a troop of like 100 plus like near sentient primate species that basically dominates the area. And by day, the males will kind of surround the spike and just kind of chill out there, play watch guard, because Tarkin says it's the only place high enough, or it's the highest place for like hundreds of kilometers around. So like that's the high ground. They learned from Obi-Wan. This is where we stay during the day.
Yeah.
At nighttime, they're running around, they're hunting, but they're...
You're blowing my mind because I don't remember any of this.
Oh, nice. And so they're the apex predators on the carrion.
Right.
And apparently their species are typically solitary and pretty vicious, but they'll leave you alone. This species is like very social, and they look different and they act different, and they hunt as a pack.
Yeah, it's very much like...
It's Planet of the Apes, man.
That's what I'm saying.
And so they've got...
I remember when I was reading the book, I was like, oh
Yeah.
my god, it's Caesar.
Yeah.
Because that's when Planet of the Apes was coming out.
Yeah. And so Tarkin is basically watching this as he grows up all this time, and then his final season, at the beginning of the summer, his uncle says, all right, here's your mission. Take as much time as you need to plan this out, but you're going to have to spend a whole day on top of the carrion spike, like up by the pillar, and then you have to find your own way down at nightfall when they're most active. And so...
And so he has to climb up by himself, or he gets dropped off? Or
he has to make his way all the way up, stay there for the full day, come down at night.
And they don't want him up there.
He can't have a blaster. He gets to have a vibro lance with limited charges. So...
Jeez. Sucks.
Pretty much...
It's like Naked and Afraid, but life and death.
So he spends... This is what is cool, and this is very telling about Tarkin's character, is that he knows this is where most of his ancestors failed. His uncle's like, plan this well, because on the return journey is where most of your predecessors failed, and you'll see their bones on your way out. I was like, holy crap. And so he takes like an entire month
to think about what to do.
A month and some change to plan out this attack. And so he's studying them at the watering hole from afar. He's like learning how the whole species interacts. He's like learning them as individuals and giving them names.
It's so cool because Sir, oh my god, Peter Cushing. I don't know if he was a knight, but Peter Cushing, the guy that plays Tarkin in A New Hope, he also played Sherlock Holmes earlier in his career. And so it's just cool because
you kind of see that.
You see that Sherlock Holmes side of him.
kind of bleeding through. And so basically he's Jeff Corwin out there, man. He's just studying the primates, figuring out their dynamic. And so eventually he goes up. He's like making preparations, though. He's making traps for his way out. He's planning his escape route. He's He's like building specialized materials to help him climb up to the top of the spike. He's like reinforcing the soles of his boots. Like going,
I remember that.
Going the extra mile. And so...
And is he interacting with the primates at any?
He's keeping his distance. Because they have...
So they're social, but they're aggressive.
They're very aggressive.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, screw you over if they... Like, they have this invisible line that he talks about that he hangs out just on the other side of it. And
but if you cross the line...
Yeah. And so he's talking about how he hangs out just on the other side of it. He's got his macro binoculars.
Yeah.
There's and he's like... And then one day, they saw him observing them. And so now they're watching him watch them. And so he's like, they just kind of saw me as a curiosity.
And they're not sentient, but
they're aware, and they've got
It's similar to like apes, like you know, an ape is smarter than a dog, but they're not sentient. If that makes sense.
And so, he's basically learning how to. He says he's never heard of. And I wish I had the name of the species off the top of my head, but
I'll look it up. Keep going.
He's heard of them. He's not heard of them being domesticated, but he's heard about them being used as security. So he's like, I want to see if I can get inside their head and kind of basically get them on my team. Wow. And so he's now...
And no one's ever thought about that before.
Exactly.
Everybody's just trying to avoid them.
He's not trying to work against them. He's trying to work with them.
How do I get them to work for me?
Yeah.
That's cool.
And so this is what he does. And the coolest part about this is that he has named his ship Carrion Spike. The ship is very important to the theme of the story. But... Palpatine asked Vader, do you know why Tarkin named his ship the Carrion Spike? And Vader says no. And Palpatine says, you should ask him. So Palpatine's impressed, and he wants Vader to know so that Vader can also be impressed.
When Palpatine's like, have you heard this joke? Go ask him the joke. Yeah. Like, that's freaking cool.
That's freaking sick.
Because we said the other day, and you were like, huh? I said Palpatine is the greatest or most powerful Star Wars character ever. Or I can't remember what I said, but I was like, he's the best Star Wars character. And I know that he's not everyone's favorite. I know that people were butthurt that he came back for Rise of Skywalker. But really, that's just the people that don't understand Sheev.
Right.
He's probably still out right now somewhere. What if he really did transfer his essence
Oh my god, that'd be so
to
funny.
Rey?
Episode 10, Palpatine returns.
Dude, what if she was like, Rey who? And it was like, sorry for those of you listening and your ears just got bloodied.
But anyway, so Vader asks him questions about the name of his ship, and then Tarkin sees where Vader's going with this, and Tarkin's about to leave the Star Destroyer they're on.
Right.
And, Vader's about to leave, and Tarkin says, let me walk you to the bay. And so basically Tarkin's like walking and talking with Vader. And it's cool because Tarkin says that he now recognizes, like, this is the first time he's had actual dialogue with Vader, and that Vader keeps looking down at him, showing him that he's listening, and Vader's asking clarifying questions. So even Vader's captivated by this story, which is sick because almost everything's below his notice.
Vader and Tarkin's relationship has always fascinated me. Because like you said, way back in 77, Vader is on screen for like 8 minutes or 12 minutes or something ridiculous. And he starts his journey towards best cinema villain of all time, which he is. And then you have Tarkin, who's on there for just 2 seconds, and he's like, hey, stop it.
Yeah.
And Vader's like, sorry.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. When you're younger, it looks like Tarkin's the boss. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of
I think
like...
as you get older...
There's a respect there.
Well, that and...
I mean, he kind of is the boss.
I think they're on a ship. Are they on the Death Star?
They're on the Death Star at the time.
The Death Star is basically Tarkin's ship.
Yeah.
And so Tarkin has command.
Yeah, talk about having the carry-on spike and then upgrading to the Death Star.
Right. Well, and basically to compensate him for the carry-on spike, Palpatine gives him his own Star Destroyer, which is kind of a big deal.
Right.
Because he's not in the Navy, strictly speaking.
Right.
Because the Moff is like a civilian and military position. But anyway, back to the carrying spike. So what he does is he plans it so that while they're eating their hunting from the night before, but before they go up to the spike, he starts to climb the spike. And he has like super reinforced gloves that there's like an old belt that broke on the speeder, and he cut that belt into pieces to make like rubberized gloves and thicken the soles of his boots. And so by the time they get there, he's on top of the spike. And he recognizes that there's the Alpha that he calls Lord, I think. He just calls him Lord. And there's like a secondary Alpha who never challenges Lord, but has his own following. I think he said of like 12 or 13 that just follow him everywhere he goes. But he called that one Shadow.
That's cool.
Which is cool. So he's like seeing the
Takes
dynamic.
you back to your Red Ball days.
I know, right? And so he's basically there, and he knows that they're all just pissed off that he's there. And so
because he's on the other side of their border now.
Yeah, well, he's in the middle of it, and he's on the very top of it. He climbed to the top of the spike, which they can't do because they don't have the rubberized gloves. They can't climb that.
Okay.
They can't climb it, and they can't jump high enough to get on top of it. And so they're basically mad dogging the base of this carrion spike. They're yelling at him, and it gets to the point where Lord steps in, and he says, Lord yells so loudly that it's louder than the rest of them combined, and like almost as if like he could yell so loud that it would knock Tarkin off.
That's cool.
And so this dude, he's like the oldest, he's all scarred. Like he's been
through some crap.
Yeah, he's just like ruined. And so Shadow all this time is still watching. And at one point...
Dang, Shadow knows that if he helps Tarkin that he can rule.
But what happens is that Shadow was waiting for an opportunity to overthrow Lord. And he saw Tarkin as the distraction that he needed. And he yelled, and all the people, or all the little monkeys that worked for Shadow, attacked Lord at the same time. And Lord, it said Tarkin was watching Lord, and it almost looked like he was confused because they had like he would get challenged all the time.
But never by a group.
But it's always like a one-on-one thing, and he said it almost looked like he was confused because of a violation of some ethic. And that he like quickly like snapped back, and he killed 3 of them before they managed to actually get him down. And then right after Lord died, Tarkin threw his Vibrolance and killed Shadow.
Oh, snap.
So, like, they had their leader, and then their pseudo-leader stepped in, and then as soon as they overthrew their main guy, then they killed the replacement, or Tarkin killed the replacement, and they were just completely confused.
Yeah.
Because now they don't have a leader.
You cut the head off a snake.
And then it said at nighttime, he climbed down and pulled his vibrolance out of Shadow's body, and none of them tried to attack him, and they actually just followed him to the perimeter.
And Homie just walked home.
And he just walked out. And after that time, all of those monkeys just left the spike. And he was the last Tarkin to be able to pass that test because he ruined it for everybody else.
Because now the test is broken. Oh, snap. Yeah, Tarkin is a bad man.
So this is the thing that shaped him from the age of like 16, 17.
Right.
To being the person that he is, in his mid-60s on the Death Star, basically large in charge number 3 in the galaxy.
Right. So after this, he enters the military.
Yeah, so there's like a paramilitary group that's regional. There is a pirate problem that he takes care of. Like nobody in that, the Outland region security force is able to take care of. It's the Ka'ana Space Pirates, or the Ka'ana's Marauders. Mm-hmm. And basically they're giving them big problems, and they're going to like bankrupt this sector because they keep, stealing all their fuel and making it just like costly.
Right.
And Tarkin basically outsmarts them, and then like he, is big there, big bad dude. And so from there he kind of transitions into a more galactic thing at the let's see, I guess that would be with the judicial forces. He was in like flight school to become a pilot, and that was more like the peacekeepers before the Jedi kind of stepped in that role, because at this point in the galaxy the Republic didn't have a formal army,
right?
So these were guys who were like the galactic police basically. And this is where Tarkin first works with a Jedi. It says he's fascinated because he's a strong hand-to-hand combatant. He liked to see, like their techniques, and he was thinking, how similar some of their fighting with the lightsabers was to his vibrolance that he's used to.
Dude, I wonder if he, I think about Thrawn, especially in the Legends continuity, and I think about Tarkin, and I wonder, because all the Jedi that we really spend any time with are like the cream of the crop. Mm-hmm. Like there's only one.
If they could take him on.
Yeah, dude. I wonder if.
I think it's like the Batman versus Superman argument. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, Batman had planning time; he could take on Superman."
Yeah.
Which I think is ridiculous. But
what about Goku and Superman?
Don't even. Anyway, that's kind of how I think of that. Like if Tarkin had time to plan.
Yeah, I know, but I think
I think Thrawn would stand a better chance, because even in the Thrawn book, Vader says, "Are you really going to tell me that you haven't thought of a way to kill me yet?" And Thrawn's like, "I've thought of 3."
Yeah, that's true. But I think that it's kind of like this. I think of the NBA as the strongest basketball association, but there are players from other leagues who are the best of that league who are better than the middle grade.
To use that 70s show type analogy. Could the top donkey beat the lesser horse?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So you think about it like a basketball player like Luka Doncic, who was like the cream of the crop in Europe. Mm-hmm. He's not better than LeBron James. He's not better than Kevin Durant. He's not better than, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He's not Steph Curry.
But he's better than the worst players in the NBA.
But he's an all-star.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I wonder if Thrawn and Tarkin, who are the smarter, they're obviously smarter than a lot of Jedi.
I think if they had their time, but if it was just a straight up all right, we're fighting now.
Yeah.
Jedi 10 out of 10. Just because
What's the level though?
It's hard to compensate for not using the Force.
Any night?
I mean, because you don't see it as much in the movies, but the books, it's it always talks about how fast Jedis are.
Yeah. It just frustrates me because
can't see.
Then you have the General Grievuses who are just mowing through folks, and I'm like, does no one have Force push?
Right.
Anybody?
I don't know. I don't want to get onto that right now, but maybe. He gets kind of made fun of when he is first arriving into the Judicial Forces Academy, essentially, because his planet is so proud of him that they land him in their best shuttle, and he's decked out in full regalia because he's already achieved some rank and some status there.
Well, you think about it, it's kind of like he's the best on their entire planet.
Yeah, and they're really proud of him, and they want him to represent, but he looks foolish because he's going to come in and he's going to be enlisted as a cadet. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like Thrawn knowing what he's capable of and knowing that he's basically an admiral in his own navy and he's having to like settle for like lieutenant.
Right.
You know, it's kind of demeaning. But it says he was slow to advance in his early career because he kept getting in fights because people would dog him and he would just take him out. And he said most of the fights that he won. But basically after that, he started to bide his time.
Come on, Tarkin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He started to bide his time, and there is the first mission that he's working with the Jedi. They were supposed to break up into different groups and advance on the point at the same time. All their communications get blocked out. But Tarkin, being Tarkin, has already memorized all the topography of the planet, and they're arguing. His group is arguing about how to cross a river, and he waits until they're all engulfed in it, and then he waited until they got to a point where he knew it was safe to cross, and then he just went and stood in the middle of the river till it was up to his chest, and he's like, "It's this deep." And then
I can tell that he's very
he's an opportunist.
Yeah, I think that him and Thrawn are very different in the fact that Thrawn is like just patient as the day is long, and Tarkin is more like he's gonna wait, but if he sees an opportunity, he's gonna take it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, Tarkin doesn't have any problems promoting himself.
Yeah, and that's kind of different than Thrawn.
Yeah, and so at that point, whoever's in charge is basically slowly deferring to Tarkin until Tarkin is impressing everybody. He's shown them how to like hunt with just like hand weapons. He's like building fires out of nothing, and finally, it was like 3 or 4 days in the jungle. They make it to where they were supposed to be, and the Jedi are like, their minds are totally blown because they didn't expect any of the forces to, like, they sent out search parties, nobody got found, and they were just basically expecting all those guys to be lost, and here comes Tarkin leading his troop, basically the homeward bound journey. In their journey
with the freaking 2 dogs and the cat,
and here comes Chance limping up. You know, he got him home. Veermox are the primate species.
Took me forever to find that.
Yeah, and so anyway, from that point on, Tarkin's like a thing of legend, and there's like just myths floating about him in the Navy, or I guess at this point in the judicial forces, and while he's at this point in his life, Palpatine's already recruiting him. Palpatine's a senator, but he recognizes that Tarkin's got potential. He's trying to recruit Tarkin into going into politics. And so for a while, Tarkin says, you know, I'm going to kind of stay where I'm at. And then gradually he realizes that he's kind of tapped out his potential in the judicial forces. And then, as far as I know, or remember, he did some politicking, and then when the Clone Wars came up, he enlisted with the Navy, and just kind of went from there.
Now, one of the cool things is, later on in the novel, or flashback, I don't know, it's kind of hard to remember what part of the novel this is in, because you're going back and forth in time, but there's a moment where Palpatine knows how strong Tarkin is as far as his intelligence and his military prowess, and he's aggressive, and Palpatine likes that. And so as the war starts,
where Tarkin is now the governor,
he's the governor,
Iriadu, which is not just like the Tarkins were like the mayors, you know what I mean? But now this is like Imperial sector almost. We're kind of getting to that point.
Yeah. Well, it's the beginning of the Clone War,
right?
And so he hasn't yet. Officially
joined
the Republic.
Before the Clone Wars, this is when he's still doing politics.
Right. And so you got to remember that even though Palpatine isn't the Emperor yet,
he's got
Sidious
designs.
is already Sidious.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
And so you got this moment where at the very beginning of the Separatists doing their thing, right before the Clone Wars starts, and everybody's kind of choosing their sides already.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the Mandalore where it's like, well, we're a peaceful people, we're not going to do anything, and all that kind of stuff. But the main players, Inner Rim, Core, Outer Rim, they're all kind of choosing their sides already. And so...
Yeah, this is the point in time where, obviously pre-Civil War, and Dooku's recruiting.
Right.
He's now forming the Separatist Alliance.
Right. So I would say this is like during episode 1, maybe?
I think this is a little bit before episode 1 because it would have been before all the troubles on Naboo.
Right. It's before Palpatine is... He's still a senator. He's not the chancellor yet. But he's already getting his ducks in a row.
Yeah.
And he sends as Sidious, which this kind of makes you realize how early on Dooku was a Sith. But as Sidious, he sends Dooku to recruit Tarkin to the separatist way of thinking and
maybe
that sort of thing.
Is during or after episode 1, because there's a big gap between 1 and 2.
Right, there's 10 years.
Yeah.
So during that time, Dooku goes and is like, man, the Republic's failing us, this, and this. And basically, Tarkin kind of tells him off and is like, I'm loyal to the Republic. I'm loyal to the Chancellor. I'm loyal to this, and this, and this. And it's really Sidious, before Tarkin knows what's going on, testing Tarkin's loyalty. Because you've got the passion, you're smart enough, are you loyal? Because that's the triangle of leadership is, are you talented? Are you committed? You know, what's your loyalty? Are you available? He's available. He's smart. Is he loyal? And so he checks on him via Dooku.
Yeah, and Dooku tries to basically persuade him 2 or 3 times, and then finally Dooku says, he's like, I'm going to come out and say it. He's like, fine, I'm going to say it. I don't care that you broke your arm. He comes out and he's like, join me.
Yeah.
And Tarkin's like, not today.
Zerg.
Not today, Zerg.
Yeah, so he's loyal, and all that does is just shoot him straight up the list of favorites on Palpatine's. So then the war breaks out, and he officially joins the Republic. He's a captain. And again, it's I'm going to bide my time, and I'll leave the governorship of a whole planet so that I can be lower in the military than most everybody else.
Yeah.
And you know that he knows that he's a greater military mind than like 99% of Jedi. But the Jedi are going to be generals and he's going to be a captain. Like, imagine you're working for Even Peel and he's like, I'm not sure what to do here. And you're like, remember the Carrion Spike? You know what I mean? Like, he's submitting himself to that because he's playing the long game. Right. That is Tarkin and Thrawn's thing, is the long game.
And what's cool about Tarkin, and we've kind of said this in a few different ways, but what's cool about Tarkin is that he is willing to just do whatever it takes to get to where he wants to be. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's just cool to see how his early life shapes his natural alliance with Palpatine, because what he had to go through to become basically even worthy of ruling on his own planet is basically the mindset that he had to be in to become like a natural ally to Palpatine's empire.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because there are a lot of people that are like, I don't know about this empire business, and Tarkin's like, yes, rule by fear.
Yeah.
He's like Iron Fist. You know what I mean?
He's
and
in.
So he recognizes the necessity to become the apex predator by reputation alone.
The galaxy is the Carrion Plains.
Yeah.
And that's just all there is to it.
Yeah.
And so from there, he obviously gains super notoriety. He's the first Grand Moff. Yeah. And it's like basically Palpatine goes, you know what? You're better than all these bums, but you kind of need the same thing. So we're going to make a whole new office for you.
So basically, Tarkin's already Moff. There's this very strategically advanced and smart and well-informed rebel cell. Before the rebellion was a cohesive unit. And he basically outsmarts him, long way around. And so he had suggested to Palpatine having, like, over-governors. So, like, there's the governors and they do their sectors, but they're kind of not in touch with each other. You know what I mean? They're just doing their thing. So he's saying there should be, like, district oversight. And
regional governors.
Yeah, and so basically Palpatine's like, long story short, you get your wish. Congratulations, Grand Moff.
It's you.
And then he puts him in charge. He's like, now you're in charge of all of the Death Star project. Because he was just in charge of like some small bits that were happening on Geonosis. He's like, now it's all your biz.
Right. So basically, here's my take, and I guess we'll kind of wrap up with this, because we all know he makes it in Rebels, and and then by Episode 4, the Death Star is destroyed. It's sheer luck. Like, it's so... Think about this. Like, how lucky is it that the good guys win in Star Wars? Like, the odds are always stacked against them, which is kind of annoying, but whatever. I don't know.
Episode 5.
I'm kind of a dark side guy myself, yeah. I'm like, Revenge of the Sith and Empire, the two best ones. But I think if, Tarkin, who is... I love that he says, evacuate in a moment of triumph. Like, he doesn't want to leave the Death Star. You know what I mean? And it speaks volumes of his character that he doesn't leave. But I'll say this. if Tarkin survived, like even if you destroy the Death Star, if Tarkin's still in the picture and if Thrawn is around by the time episode 6 happens, it would not, I don't give a good gosh darn what happens on Endor. Because I think if Tarkin is around to keep the Emperor grounded a little bit, it doesn't even matter if Vader turns. I don't think, personally.
Well, and at that point, the Emperor or the Empire kind of would have had a better figurehead to rally around, because everybody knew it was Palpatine, Vader, Tarkin.
Right. And so if Vader kind of starting to lose his marbles a little bit, by the time he learns about Luke, he's obsessed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's like, all right. Like think about this. You've got the whole galaxy-wide rebellion going on.
Right. He's looking for a hobby. He's hit his midlife crisis.
Yeah.
He's Solomon, he's getting 60 years into his reign. He's like, I've had it all, but it's nothing.
Yeah, he's getting his first tattoo at 65. He's got a Jeep. He's moving out to the middle of nowhere.
His Porsche is red and it's a convertible.
Yeah, you know. He's
looking for that nice hot blonde to sit in the passenger seat.
He's buying tank tops that say he's buying tank tops that say life's better topless. It's a
got
Jeep
a picture
joke.
of a Jeep,
Yeah.
you know.
That's Vader in episodes 5 through 6. And so if Tarkin was there to go, hey, get your head out of your metallic butt. We've got things to do. Because Tarkin's the only person besides Palpatine that has that place to say, hey, snap out of it.
Yeah. Well, and you can see kind of that Palpatine's a little bit fed up with Vader by the time episode 6 rolls around, because Vader's like, he'll come to me. And Palpatine's like, he will come to you. Are you with me? And then you will bring him to me.
Right.
God.
Yeah.
You know,
think about it. Like, okay, you got the whole galaxy going on.
He's being so condescending.
You've got the whole galaxy going on. And in episode 5, he's like, I've lost this toy, and I will hire you to find it for me. Like, think about that. Why is the Empire on Bespin in episode 5 when there's a whole rebellion to defeat? Yeah. Like, he doesn't understand. I mean, he doesn't know that Leia's with Han Solo. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know what's going on.
Right.
So
all he cares about is Luke.
All he cares about is...
To be fair,
but Palpatine... he really likes... Also, why does he like the Falcon so much? Have you thought about that?
I think he hates the Falcon.
He's like, I want that chip.
I think it's because it's gotten away from him. Also, episode 4, it is the Falcon that shoots Vader.
Yeah. So if he catches it, you think he drives it?
I don't know. Maybe that would be just like a stick it to the man.
Yeah.
He's like, guess who's driving the Falcon now?
It's me.
That'd be a mad flex.
Yeah, that'd be pretty dope. Vader driving the Falcon.
It'd be painted black.
Yeah. Dude, it would be sick. He'd get it all fixed up.
Black Sabbath would be stoked.
Oh, yeah. He has unlimited credits. Yeah, imagine he has it black with like flames coming off the front. Well, probably not flames. He's not really a fan of flames.
No, all black.
All black, shiny. And, anyways, we're kind of get off subject here. Yeah. But yeah, Tarkin's the man. And if you're a reader or if you love audiobooks...
Sorry, it's the Rolling Stones that did paint it black. I knew I was wrong when I said Black Sabbath.
I would get my hands on that book, Tarkin. I'm sure it's available on Amazon for like $8 if you want paperback. If you're a listener, if you have Audible, I would listen to the audiobook. It's just really great. And so that's Tarkin, man. He is more than meets the eye.
Yeah.
And we're not going to talk about what happens in a certain point of view. So there you had it first. So that's Tarkin for you. And we'll be back next week. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Like this video, share it. Subscribe to our podcast on Audible, but Apple Podcast and Spotify. And until then, may the Force be with you.
And remember, the only family you have here
is me. I was happy to join with you on that one. Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys next week.